Philip Carter stepped through the wrought iron gates of St. Augustine's Academy, the weight of its history pressing down on him like the thick clouds above. The campus was a masterpiece of old-world grandeur, stone archways framed by ivy, towering spires casting long shadows against the manicured lawns. But it wasn't the architecture that made his pulse quicken. It was the figure waiting for him on the steps. Tyler Whitmore, tall, effortlessly poised, his uniform perfectly tailored to his lean, athletic frame. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he hadn't bothered with a mirror, but still managed to look devastatingly put together. There was something almost predatory in the way he observed Philip, his gaze unwavering, his smirk just a little too knowing. "Philip Carter," Tyler drawled, his voice rich, smooth as aged whiskey. "You're the new arrival." Philip nodded, suddenly aware of how tightly he was gripping the strap of his bag. Tyler stepped closer, his presence both commanding and suffocating. "I'll be your guide." A slow smirk curled at his lips as he leaned in, voice a near whisper. "Welcome to St. Augustine's. Try not to get lost." Philip swallowed. He already was. Philip had barely begun to navigate the labyrinthine halls of St. Augustine's Academy when Tyler led him down a dimly lit corridor, away from the watchful eyes of students and faculty. The air was thick with the scent of old books, polished wood, and something else, something distinctly Tyler. It was a mixture of expensive cologne and something raw, something that sent a shiver crawling up Philip's spine. Tyler pushed open the door to a secluded study lounge, stepping inside before glancing back. "In here, it's quieter," he said, voice laced with an edge of amusement. Philip hesitated, but the flicker of challenge in Tyler's dark eyes made his breath hitch. He stepped in, the door clicking shut behind him, sealing them in together. Tyler leaned against the grand oak table in the center of the room, arms folded, watching Philip with an intensity that made his stomach tighten. "So, tell me," Tyler mused, his voice low and deliberate, "are you here to blend in, or are you the type to make an impression?" Philip swallowed hard. His skin was too warm, his uniform too tight. There was something about the way Tyler spoke, the way he looked at him, like he already knew the answer. Tyler stepped closer, so close that Philip could feel the heat radiating from his body. His fingers ghosted over Philip's wrist, barely touching, yet enough to make his pulse hammer. "You intrigue me," Tyler murmured. "Let's see how much." The library was quiet, cloaked in an air of solemnity, but Philip's pulse was anything but steady. He had intended to study. Honestly, he had, but Tyler had other plans. Philip sat at one of the wooden study tables, attempting to focus on his open textbook, but the presence of Tyler, lounging lazily across from him, made concentration impossible. He was watching Philip over the rim of coffee cup, dark eyes glinting with something unreadable. The silence between them was thick, charged with an unspoken tension that neither had dared to name. Tyler leaned forward, fingers brushing the spine of Philip's book, an unnecessary touch, deliberate in its subtlety. "You're tense," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "You should relax." Philip swallowed, his throat dry. Before he could finish, Tyler's foot nudged his under the table, the contact featherlight but enough to make heat curl in Philip's stomach. His breath hitched, fingers tightening around his pen. Tyler smirked, knowing, teasing. "Let me help you unwind." His hand ghosted over Philip's knee beneath the table, a forbidden touch shielded by the heavy wooden surface. Philip stiffened, but he didn't pull away. He couldn't. "You like this?" Tyler whispered, barely audible over the distant rustle of pages being turned. "Don't you?" Philip couldn't speak, couldn't move. He was trapped in the moment, in the slow, deliberate drag of Tyler's fingers, in the wicked gleam in his eyes. This was dangerous, but God, he wanted more. The dim glow of the bedside lamp cast elongated shadows across the walls, the air thick with something Philip couldn't name. Anticipation, fear, desire all tangled together in an intoxicating web. Tyler stood by the window, his blazer discarded, his tie loosened just enough to reveal the graceful curve of his throat. His eyes were unreadable, heavy-lidded, watching Philip with an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. Philip swallowed, hands clenched into fists at his sides. He shouldn't be here, in Tyler's dormitory, behind a locked door, but the weight of the night, the stolen glances, the lingering touches. The way Tyler had brushed his fingers along Philip's wrist during dinner had led him here, step by dangerous step. You don't have to stay, Tyler murmured, though his body language said the opposite. He wasn't dismissing Philip. He was giving him the final choice. Philip took a shaky breath. He knew once the line was crossed, there would be no return to the safety of before. But when Tyler took a step closer, the heat of his body inches away, all rational thought burned away like paper to a flame. And then Tyler kissed him. It wasn't hesitant. It was claiming, deep and slow, a deliberate unraveling. Philip melted, his hands finding their way into Tyler's hair, tugging just enough to earn a quiet groan. The weight of control slipped between them, lost in the press of bodies and the hurried fumbling of buttons. Tonight, there would be no stopping. No regrets. Only this. The heat between them had become an addiction, a fire they couldn't douse, no matter how much logic warned them to. Nights in the library turned into whispered confessions behind locked doors. Hands seeking, lips crashing together in a frenzy of longing that neither could control. It was reckless, dangerous, but the more they tried to resist, the more the tension pulled them back into each other's orbit. Tonight was no different. Philip barely had time to step inside before Tyler pushed him back against the door, fingers gripping his collar, tugging him into a kiss that stole the breath from his lungs. It wasn't soft, it was hungry, desperate. Tyler's body pressed flush against his, heat radiating between them, his hands mapping Philip's torso through the fabric of his shirt, as if memorizing every contour. Philip gasped as Tyler's lips trailed down his throat, his knees nearly buckling from the sensation. "We shouldn't," he breathed, but even as the words left his mouth, he was already pulling Tyler closer. "I don't care," Tyler muttered, dragging his tongue along Philip's jaw before biting just hard enough to leave a mark. "Tell me you don't want this, and I'll stop." Philip couldn't. Instead, he let himself fall into the moment, his fingers tangling in Tyler's hair, their bodies pressing, grinding, until nothing else existed outside of this feverish need. They had crossed every line, burned every bridge. There was no turning back now, and neither of them wanted to. Philip sat at the edge of Tyler's bed, his fingers still tingling from the way they had clawed at his back only moments before. The sheets were a tangled mess around them, bodies slick with sweat, breath still ragged from the fire they had just ignited between them. The room smelled of heat, of sex, of something primal and unspoken. The weight of their actions pressed against the silence, thick and heavy, but neither made a move to pull away. Tyler lay beside him, head propped on one arm, his lips still swollen from their last desperate kiss. His fingers trailed lazily down Philip's spine, tracing the ridges of his back like he was committing them to memory. "You're thinking too much," he murmured, his voice husky, laced with satisfaction. Philip exhaled sharply. He paused, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "We keep doing this, Tyler, and it's getting harder to pretend it doesn't mean something." Tyler's smirk faltered for a moment, his fingers stilling against Philip's skin. "Does it have to mean something?" he asked. But the hesitation in his voice betrayed him. Philip turned to face him, their bodies still close, the heat between them still lingering. "Maybe it already does," he whispered. Tyler's jaw tensed. He leaned in, pressing a slow, lingering kiss against Philip's lips, less desperate, more deliberate, as if he knew, deep down, that there was no escaping this anymore. They had crossed into dangerous territory, and neither of them wanted to leave. Philip knew he should leave, that he should grab his clothes from the floor and walk out before either of them made another mistake. But Tyler was still sprawled on the bed, his chest rising and falling in slow, deep breaths, his body still glowing from the fire they had just burned through together. The weight of the night pressed against Philip's skin, an invisible force tethering him to this bed, to Tyler, to the mess they had created. Tyler turned onto his side, his gaze steady, unreadable. "You're still here," he murmured, voice thick with exhaustion. Philip exhaled, running his fingers along the tangled sheets. "I should go," he said, but made no move to leave. Tyler's hand slid over Philip's, warm and grounding. "Then go," he whispered, a challenge hidden beneath the softness. But neither of them moved. The silence stretched between them, filled with all the things they refused to say. The tension was unbearable, electric, like a storm waiting to break. And then, before Philip could stop himself, he surged forward, capturing Tyler's mouth in a bruising kiss, teeth clashing, fingers digging into skin as if holding on for dear life. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Tyler swallowed hard. "We keep doing this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Philip nodded, his heart pounding. "And we're going to do it again." Tyler's fingers tightened around his. "Yeah," he admitted. "We are." Philip had always imagined that guilt would be sharp, a searing wound that burned through his conscience. Instead, it was dull, a slow ache that settled in his chest, growing heavier each day. He told himself that what happened with Tyler was a mistake, a beautiful, intoxicating mistake, but a mistake nonetheless. And yet, he couldn't stay away. The days passed in a blur of stolen glances and fleeting touches. Every brush of Tyler's fingers against his own sent fire licking down Philip's spine. Every smurf from across the room made his pulse stutter. They were careful in public, pretending nothing had changed, but in private, they unraveled. It wasn't just the nights they spent tangled together, bodies desperate and greedy. It was the way Philip found himself needing Tyler's presence, the way conversations bled into hours, the way Tyler looked at him as if he was something precious and fragile, even when Philip felt like he was breaking apart. But the weight of reality was impossible to ignore. Whispers had started, questions Philip wasn't ready to answer. Someone had seen them disappear into Tyler's dorm after curfew. Someone had noticed the way Tyler's hand lingered on Philip's back a second too long. The walls were closing in, the careful lines they had drawn beginning to blur. One night, as they lay side by side in the dark, Tyler exhaled heavily. "What happens when they find out?" Philip turned his head, his throat tight. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I don't want to stop." Philip knew the truth could only stay buried for so long. The whispers had grown louder, the stolen moments more precarious. The fear of discovery had once been a distant threat, but now it was an inevitable storm on the horizon. It was only a matter of time before someone confronted them, before the administration got involved, before their secret became a spectacle. And yet, the thought of walking away from Tyler felt impossible, like cutting off a limb, like severing a part of himself that had only just begun to feel whole. The night it all came to a head. They stood in the dim glow of Tyler's dormitory, tension crackling between them. "They know," Tyler murmured, voice thick with something unreadable. "Headmaster called me in today." Philip's stomach dropped. "What did you say?" Tyler's gaze was steady, unwavering. "That I wasn't going to apologize." Philip sucked in a breath. His world was teetering on the edge, the ground crumbling beneath him. But then Tyler reached for his hand, fingers threading together like a lifeline. "We can fight this," Tyler whispered. Philip squeezed back, voice steady despite the fear. "Then we fight." Love, identity, and self-acceptance are timeless struggles, especially in a world that often dictates who we should be. Philip and Tyler's story is a reminder that the journey to authenticity isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. In today's life, many still battle societal pressures, fear of judgment, or the pain of hiding their true selves. The lesson here is to embrace who you are unapologetically, surround yourself with those who uplift you, and never let fear dictate your choices. Love should never be hidden in the shadows. Find the courage to live and love openly on your own terms.